welcome to another 2-minute table talker with the HanDrinksSolo Wine Club, this time on Intellego's Kolbroek Syrah 2018. Now, another vintage has come and gone, and that means that there is another vintage of exciting wines from one of South Africa's more purest natural winemakers, Jurgen Gouws, and his label Intellego. Now, if you must know, Kolbroek means spotty pants in Afrikaans, and the wine is in fact named after a weird-looking spotted pig. And perhaps appropriately so, because this is one massively brooding, big, bolshy, beautiful beast of a wine. And while it is all of those things, it is also unapologetically pure. And by pure, I don't mean pretty or tidy or easy drinking. What I mean is that when you taste it, you become very aware that you are tasting nothing more than the result of fruit, the air around the fruit, and the yeast in the air around the fruit. These three elements interact to produce something quite remarkable. And you know there's nothing else there because this is, by all definitions, a natural wine. Perhaps what's most beautiful about this wine is that when you're drinking it, you're not remarking to yourself on how natural it tastes, but rather you're struck by just how complex and expressive it is, which any great wine should be, whether natural or not. But at this point you might say, whoa, let's take a step back. I don't even know what a natural wine is. Well, natural winemaking is, I guess, a sort of political or philosophical statement that says we make wine without any additives and without any technology. Practically, this means that the grapes you use have to be organically farmed. And then you're not allowed to control temperature of fermentation. You're definitely not allowed to add yeast. You can't add sulfur. You cannot filter, and there's other things as well. To be clear, the natural winemaking ethos is not a logical position that claims to make better wine. In fact, I think any wine lover who claims that natural wines are better wines will no doubt lose friends and alienate people and also be wrong. Because actually, when you look at the natural wine movement and its ethos, it doesn't address quality at all. It's in fact more of a sort of political reaction against the mechanization and industrialization of wine, which has led us to a world where now every last little detail in the flavor profile of a wine can be controlled. All the mystery has been eradicated from winemaking. It's become wine manufacturing, really. And the flavor of any wine is a foregone conclusion if you want it to be. Whether it's through supercharged yeast strains or enzymes or temperature control or filtration or centrifuges or the adding of oak powders and oak essences, you really can make a wine taste however you want it to taste. And so wine has ceased to be that mystical, transcendent manifestation of man and soil and fruit, and instead it's become mix a drink. And I do acknowledge that if you're thirsty enough, mix a drink can be delicious and easy to make. So what's the problem, you might ask? Well, while natural winemakers do try and make wines that are delicious, they definitely do not have any aspirations to make the process easy. In fact, the natural winemaking ethos is really more about making wines that are honest. And honestly, sometimes natural wines are not at all delicious because sulfur is really good at making sure things don't go rotten. And without it, wines can get feral really fast. And at this point you might ask, well, if it can all go wrong, then why bother? Why, Lenny? It's not like there's other industries that do this. You don't have a whole fraternity of surgeons who've decided to do only natural surgery using flint stones as knives and sinew for stitches and catnip as anesthetic. Why is natural wine even a thing? It doesn't make sense. And I think that's about right. I don't think natural wine ever claimed to be a rational position. In fact, I find it endearingly illogical. But I think natural wine makes the most sense when you taste something like the Kolbroek Syrah. And even the most die-hard disciples of science and technology have to admit that there's a special kind of awe to tasting something as complex and evolving as this Syrah, and know that there is nothing in there other than the grapes off the vine and the yeasts from the air around it. Now, if we had more time, I'd go into telling you about how incredibly difficult it is to make a great natural wine, even though it sounds so simple. But that'll have to wait for another day. So what of this particular wine? Well, honestly, I could sniff it all evening. I wouldn't even have to taste it. It's so engaging on the nose. But if you do get around to sipping it, you'll notice that it is big, brawny to the max. It's got tannins firmer than an Olympic butt cheek. And honestly, if you're going to serve it to guests, I would put it in a decanter for an hour or two. Or you can put it in the cellar for at least 10 years and it'll only get better. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Syrah and on natural wines in general. So make sure you leave a review at the bottom of the info video page on the HanDrinksSolo website. If you have any questions about Intellego, about Jurgen Gouws, about natural wines, or about Kolbroek, feel free to drop them there and I will answer them as soon as possible.